Welcome class to week 7. This assignment has to do with methodology and data analysis paper. Methodology and data analysis paper. So this week we will talk about the assignment you have to do. Again, it is from the big idea, your research proposal idea that will be due next week, your week 8. Okay, so you're gonna put everything that we've done so far together in week 8. But week 7 is you're gonna focus on two sections. One is methodology section, and the other one is data analysis section. Okay, so this is a huge section. Technically speaking, this is the one of your biggest section of all. Okay, of all this paper. So again, I would highly recommend you follow your sample here, okay, on this guide, basically. So again, you don't have to put in any of these to put things in perspective. You are again doing the paper, the big huge research proposal paper that you started from week 2 all the way through now. Week 3 you did the 10 article. Week 4 you did the section with introduction, statement of problem, hypothesis, problem, purpose of study, and definition of term. That's week 4. Week 5 you did the city training program. Week 6 you turn in your abstract. Abstract. Last week you did the abstract discussion and the human protection. So this week, the only section that you're responsible for again is methodology section. Okay, none of other sections you have to turn it in. Make sure you have the cover page. Your cover page should be there all along the way, so it should have that. Should look similar to this, but make sure you have your own title, not this generic title. So your actual title, what kind of title that that has to do with your paper, what is your paper is testing. You should have your name, the university, the class name, and also the date as well. Okay. You do not need an abstract, so do not submit the abstract. You already did that last week. You don't need to introduction. You don't need a statement of the problem. So make sure in all of these sections, as you're gonna turn it back in next week, make sure it's corrected. Don't use the one that you submitted in. Use the one that I make correction. Go in and look at my correction that I made for you, or actually ask you to do. So again, a few things to kind of remember, to refresh this if you want to know. We've been talking about this section all along in your PowerPoint. We talk about different research design. So whichever design that you are doing, I highly recommend looking at that chapter and look at what kind of design you are doing. Okay. So what kind of research design are you doing? How many participants are you getting from? What kind of sample are you doing? Is it a bias, a convenient sample that basically just getting people from you that you know of, people from your Facebook, people from your work? Those are considered convenient sample. Are you a sample? Are you a sample or participant that you pick? Is that random? Are they random? Are they more selective? If they are selective, they could be a quasi-experimental study, and there are different group of quasi. You might want to look at that chapter as well. Instrumentation. What are you using? How are you going to go about conducting your study? Are you doing survey? If you're doing survey, you need to write down what kind of survey are you doing. You should have appendix for the paper showing the sample of the surveys that you're actually conducting, that you're going to be giving out. You might want to also list on here, what are you going to take with you as an instrumentation? What kind of material? You need a clipboard, you need a paper, you need pencil. What kind of things that you're going to be taking with you to do an actual research? And how are you going to do the research? You need to describe it in detail. Okay, first you're gonna hand them a piece of paper. Let's say you're doing a survey. You're gonna hand them a piece of paper, and where is that piece of paper gonna go once they're done? You want to make sure they sign a consent. You actually have to get a consent form. What is consent form would look like? You should have that as part of your appendix as well, Appendix B. So again, this section is not short. It's actually very long. You have to be able to detailedly describing everything that you do. Just imagine you video recording the whole entire event, and then you translate that video into word, describing word by word, play by play of how you actually conducting the study. Then that's very important. Okay, for this assignment, for you to be able to stating all of that, every single thing, how you're going to conduct the study, what are the steps. You have to don't put in a bullet points, or don't put in a line time format. You have to write it out in a paragraph format. First, the participant will be doing this. Second, the participant will be doing that. Third, the participant will be doing that. If you do experimental groups, if you're doing, let's say you're doing a control group versus a treatment group, one group you don't give them any music. The other group you give them music, and then you want to measure those. So you have to describe that in detail, how you're going to conduct it. So the first group, control group, the participant will take the pre-test, and then they will do some type of puzzle without any music, and then they will take post-test, and you would measure what. Okay. Also, let's be bringing that up since I brought that up. You might want to also list down what are your independent and dependent variables that you are testing. So what are your independent variable? What is your dependent that you are testing? Okay, for instance, for the music therapy, let's say you're using music to help to see their improvement of their depression. So that your independent would be the music versus no music. So you have two groups. One group has music, the other group doesn't have music. And then your dependent would be their depression score, the depression test. You could do the pre-test versus the post-test and see whether their score change. With the pre-test, how they feel, they mildly depressed, and then post-test has those depression improve. So write all of those out. You have to actually write everything out on here. Okay, on this section. So what are your dependent variable? What is what is your dependent variable? What are your independent variables that you are testing? What is your research design? Are you doing survey, correlational study, quasi-experimental, experimental study, multifactorial study? What kind of research study are you doing? Sampling, what kind of sample are you getting? There's a chapter talk about a whole entire section, whole entire chapter about samplings, different type of samplings. You might want to read that chapter. Use those lingo that you heard from the PowerPoint that you read in your book. So use those lingos. Instrumentation, how you gonna carry those out specifically. And the last section you're going to be doing is data analysis. What kind of analysis that you're going to be using for your tests, okay? And you're not going to for this class you're not going to actually conduct study, so therefore you don't have to actually conduct these things. But for psychology student major, for those of you who will take advanced research method, you will be conducting by using these things. So for survey, if you're doing descriptive study, so what does that mean? You might want to also look at chapter 13 and 14 in the book, which covered this week, that talks about in really detail about these studies. So if you're doing descriptive study, you're going to be looking at the mean, the mode, the standard deviation, the median, all of those things. Those would be the descriptive study. If you're doing the correlational study, you have to mention that you are using Pearson R or Spearman Role. If you're doing ranked, any type of ranking would be Spearman Role, but for the most part, you're going to be using a Pearson R, and hopefully you're going to say that you use Pearson R in the SPSS program. SPSS, that's a statistic program by IBM that actually will analyze the data for you. If you're doing experimental research, even with quasi-experiment, you're going to be using a t-test. Okay, pair sample t-test. You're gonna, if you have two groups that you're comparing, control group versus treatment group, you're gonna use those with t-test to see. If you're gonna do ANOVA, you're gonna use one-way ANOVA to actually see that. If you do ANOVA, you actually have to use post hoc, another test, to actually confirm your ANOVA if your ANOVA is significant. So all of those has to be put into this section here. So make sure you're including all of those in. If you are doing multifactorial, which I don't recommend you doing, multifactorial, you're going to be using two-way ANOVA. For t-test, you would be using one-way ANOVA. For multifactorial, you'll be using two-way ANOVAs in a SPSS. So you're going to include that little blurb in at the end. So this should be a fairly short section comparing to all of these. All of these should be nice and long because you're going to describe step by step how you're going to be doing it. If you're doing survey also, like, at the end you have to make sure everything is confidential, putting envelope, how you're going to keep, where you're going to keep those envelope. If you're doing survey, all of those things has to be mentioned onto that section. Okay, thank you for listening, and hopefully if you have any questions, please contact me. Feel free to call me or email me at any time, or even use the inbox here on your left here, and it will show up on my email as well. So please feel free to contact me anytime if you have a question about this assignment. Thank you.